When we browse the internet, we're taking it for granted. Our browsers were designed and developed for people that possess all of their senses. But what if I told you to navigate your website with your eyes closed? And good luck using the mouse because you have no idea where it points. So you have no other choice than to use your keyboard and use a screen reader, which is a text-to-speech software that reads out all the text on a page out loud. And this is how the screen reader sounds like.
Windows N. I. Enter. Windows Internet Explorer. Connecting ... Page has 5 headings and 61 links. Home-Cleveland Site Center. Home.
Yes, I could slow the speech down so all of you could understand it. But it's not important that you understand it.
I was just wondering if you could understand it.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. This is slow to me.
And it's reading every move that the blind man does on the keyboard. And it's so freaking fast that nobody can keep up. And you might think screen readers do a great job, right? But the thing is that websites need to adapt for screen readers too, so that screen readers can read the website out loud. If websites are not made to be accessible in the first place, then people with disabilities will have a frustrating time using those websites. After interviewing 73 blind adults, the researchers found that around 70% of e-commerce, news and information, and government categories had significant accessibility issues. And that was in 2019. What's horrible is that 8 out of 10 news websites have accessibility issues. And that's crazy because 8 out of 10 news websites are not made accessible. And that doesn't only concern blind people. Accessibility issues concern blind people, deaf people, and also it can be a person with a broken arm. Government websites, news websites, and e-commerce websites are the most essential websites to be accessible for everyone. And it's pretty self-explanatory why. Because everyone wants to have information from the government, wants to read the news, and also buy something online, like make a food order or buy something from Amazon. Talking about e-commerce, 2/3 of the top 10 online retailers have serious accessibility issues, meaning that they're leaving $6.9 billion in potential North American e-commerce revenues on the table. For online retailers out there, this means that you're missing out on a big audience. And wait, let's also come back to the government website accessibility issues as well, because there's a big concern there. Because people with disabilities are the most likely to be unemployed. In fact, people with disabilities are twice more likely to be unemployed compared to those without a disability. And it's an unemployment rate of 7.3% in the US. And what happens when you don't have a job and that you're struggling to find a job? Then you're probably going on a government website and asking for some unemployment programs. And I mean, it's the government, it's their duty to make sure that their website is accessible for everyone, for every single citizen. But let's ask the big question. Why aren't websites adapted for the disabled? Why aren't websites accessible for everyone? And I think the answer is pretty simple. It's just harder to develop. But not only to develop, but also to design. Because designers will need to keep in mind to not just make a website as artistically beautiful as possible, but also how to make sure it's readable for everyone. For example, making sure that the contrast is fitting everyone's eyes. And as a website designer and a web developer myself, I think it really has a chance to restrict our creativity. Or if you take it in another way, we might even need to be more creative to find a way to suit every single user with one design style. In fact, I had a little talk with Nico from Blog It In. He's a website developer. And we discussed additional obstacles that a developer can face when trying to develop a website for everyone. So make it as fully accessible as possible. So I asked him the following question. What are the challenges when you're developing an accessible website? What are the biggest challenges when you have to develop a website for the disabled?
Well, there are a few challenges. First, what I think that's very challenging is that there are so many things you have to work on. And achieving complete accessibility, in my opinion, is not possible. Mm-hmm. Because this field is so huge. And even I oftentimes I have to Google something again if I'm not sure if this thing is actually true, how I'm doing it. And that's one big challenge because it's so massive. And another challenge is that we are operating on 3 different browser systems. Like Chrome and Edge, for example, use Chromium. Then Safari uses WebKit. And Firefox uses Gecko. And oftentimes these browser systems, they work differently. So a screen reader from Safari works completely different than one from Chromium. So you have to kind of develop not only fully accessible, but you have to develop accessible and cross-browser. And like these things combined, even accessibility is massive, but then the issue with having 3 different browser systems that are very important, that's very hard.
Yeah, so even more challenges for developers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And I had another thought. I basically thought that internet browsers should encourage developers to develop accessible websites and should encourage accessibility features. And in return, reward those developers, for example, by offering higher SEO rankings, in fact. And you know what's SEO, right? It stands for search engine optimization, and it's basically the process to rank your websites higher on Google. And I had a theory that at one point, Google will force somehow, not like, force, but they will somehow encourage developing accessible websites by offering a higher ranking in return. And the truth is that if Google really wants to require developers to do something, then they can do it no problem, because they have literally their full power. If they want to change some SEO metrics and change the way they're ranking their websites in their search engine, then no problem. They can do it like this. And the thing is that I asked the same question to Nico and I shared with him my theory. So websites adapted for mobile is a must. Right? You have to adapt them for mobile. If not, Google is not going to rank you. Google is going to put you like at a lower rank in their SEO just because you're not adapted to mobile. So it's something that is required for usability, right? User experience. Do you think that Google will force all the developers to adapt all the websites for people with disabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question, Maxime. And I was actually thinking about that question a long time, because with the new Google update that's coming on March, actually literally in a couple of days, they want to really focus on the usability. I've listen about that update, and what they want to do is they want to change the ranking system, and they want to rank the core web vitals. So the core web vitals consists of 3 things. First is the largest contentful paint, and that basically means if the website is on a high loading speed. The second thing that they want to include is first input delay. And this measures the responsiveness of a page, and it devalues the experience of the user interacting with this website for the first time. And the third thing they want to include in this Core Web Vitals update is cumulative layout shift, CLS. And that's basically if, for example, you're lazy loading an image and you're scrolling through a page fast, then content will change because an image is being loaded, and maybe a text will then go below that because it loads slower. Okay, so these are all 3 things Google wants to implement in their ranking system. And these are the core web vitals, and they really focus on usability. And to get that to accessibility with websites, the second point, the first input delay, which measures how the user interacts with this website for the first time. That also goes to disabled people. So I don't think that Google will force developers to develop accessible. That's part of the law. But it will definitely have an impact on the ranking of the website.
Mm-hmm. So it will
Because-
really have SEO benefits.
Absolutely, because of this thing, first input delay, the way how the user interacts for the website, like interacts with the website for the first time. Because we're not looking like for the disabled community, we're also looking at tons of people. So those people are like, it's a large community actually. And if a disabled person goes onto your website and he cannot interact, this will then have a bad effect on your ranking of your website.
All the search platforms, they will adapt, and they will in somewhat way encourage the use of websites that do support features for disabled, with people with disabilities. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean, that's their duty as well, you know? They should do something.
You mean for developers or for the platform?
For the users, the disabled users, it's it's something Google has to do as an authority. They have the power to change the playground and not force, but encourage developers to develop for the disabled. And I think that's their duty. Okay, and I had also another thought. What if not all the websites needed to be accessible for everyone? And I thought that maybe people with visual impairment wouldn't be searching for a B2B product that is more, business related, or something very expensive for B2B industries. Do all the websites need to be adapted for people with disabilities? For example, if you're a company that's a B2B company and you sell, for example, huge integrations for huge e-commerce websites, and it's a very specific niche, and it's very corporate. It's not like a B2C. Do those websites need to be adapted for the disabled? A big misconception or a thought of disabled people will not go on those websites. They don't necessarily they're not the public for those type of services. If they're not the right client for the services, why would you adapt the website for them? What do you think about that?
That's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of misconception about this problem with accessibility. Accessibility does not, for example, mean you're blind or colorblind. Mm-hmm. It could also be, for example, you broke your arm and now you cannot use the mouse.
That's a good point.
For example, and in this point, when you cannot use the mouse, you have to navigate with the tab. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think, I mean, from my personal experience, I've broken my arm 2 times when I was playing football.
God damn it!
and I remember those times when I was having problems when using the computer back then. And yeah, I mean, that's something that can happen to everybody, to anybody, really. And for that reason, yes, absolutely. Even if you are a complete niche product, that's absolutely necessary.
Okay,
yeah.
I see. So it's really, the disabled are not people that are only blind. We're learning the fact that it's a bigger public than we think.
Yeah, it's almost half the web actually. Like if we include these people like breaking an arm, then you're at half.
It's huge. And there's still a lot of effort that we need to dedicate towards that subject to make sure that the internet is accessible for everyone. And people with disabilities are sometimes scared to approach the internet because it seems very intimidating to them, because it's also not very well adapted for them. But the purpose of this video was to make you aware of accessibility issues. And if you're a web designer or a web developer, then I wanted to show you that there is an audience left out there, and that we have to make our websites available to them. And if you learned anything helpful in this video, then please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me, and also please like. And I'll be bringing you more web design and development content to you pretty soon. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.